Hi, welcome to this episode of Industry Voice. And today I have Eric de Oliveira on the show today. How are you, Eric?
Doing well. How you doing, Jeff? Excited to be
Good.
here.
I am glad to have you on. And our mutual friend Meredith introduced us,
hmm
and she was like, my friend Eric, I think he would be great for your podcast. So I was like, okay, let's meet Eric and let's bring him on. So
Awesome.
thank you for coming on. Thank you for joining us. And today,
hmm
if you want to give our audience a background and introduce yourself, Mike.
Yeah, so my name's Eric de Oliveira. I've a marketing background and primarily B2B and B2C for the past 20 years. I've worked in insurance for the past 10. I've held roles such as CMO and Chief Customer Officer at Simply Business. I was employee number 3 there, Jeff, and it was quite the experience and pretty incredible experience all around. I've also worked at Corvus Insurance as the Director of Growth most recently. And I sort of got my initial kick in the insurance space through Mafre. So I worked there for about 2 years, just about 10 years ago. So been around the block a little bit, have done a little bit of everything around insurance. And then on a personal level, I've got I'm an undergrad from Northeastern, so Husky all the way, and my MBA from Babson, so very local here in the Boston area. And I live in Ashland, Mass, with my wife Monica, my two boys Miles and Julian, 9 and 5, and they both feel like teenagers at this point. That's a little bit about me, my background.
I try to bring a wide, array of people from the insurance community.
hmm
And I don't think I've had many chief marketing officer or digital marketing people on the show, so I'm excited to dive in on this episode.
hmm
And insurance is not the easiest marketing to build around because we're selling thin air. We're selling a brand, we're selling a trust, right? So
hmm
what made you want to get into this side of the world?
That's a great question. I get asked that question a lot. I kind of make the joke that before insurance, I worked at Bose for about 10 years. So at cocktail parties, everyone wanted to talk to me, ask me about a discount, ask me about the new speaker. And now, since I've been in insurance, I introduce them. Oh, I work in insurance, and I feel like people start to disperse, right? They're like, "Oh yeah, that's fine. We're done talking to you." Uh, but I was recruited into it at Mafre, and they wanted somebody specifically outside of insurance to help them change the way they were doing things, right? And that kind of got me excited. I had no idea what to expect, and sort of just fell into it, which is the old story you hear about almost everybody in insurance, right? You're either born into it or you fall into it somehow. So I kind of just took on that challenge, and I what I found is that it's extremely difficult, it's extremely challenging, it's extremely data driven, which all of those things really talked to me and spoke to me. And I loved the idea and the challenge of trying to change the things that I could, right? Trying to change, and we'll talk a little bit about this, but how you market to customers, how you think about customers, how you actually provide a good experience for the customer, which when at the time, it was all relatively new still to insurance, right? We've made long strides since I started in the business, but there's still a lot of room for growth and a lot of room to change. So that's sort of what excites me about it.
What is the difference on building brand and marketing for a legacy company, a big company,
Mhm.
versus a insurtech startup?
It's a great question. And what came to mind is in one, you sort of want to minimize the noise, and the other, you want to make as much noise as possible, right? When you're sort of a big brand, you have a lot of things to care for and be concerned about. You have your reputation, you have a large book of business, you've got it's a lot more delicate, right? And you have to control and be very, very deliberate in everything you do. And I think you have to be very careful when you're trying to make a name for yourself in a startup. It's almost a little bit the opposite. You've got to get out there. You've got to try things that may or may not work. There's a lot of noise in the marketplace, right? And I know from an insurtech perspective, when I first got into insurtech, it was a big topic. Like it was relatively new in the US still, but it was a big topic because there was a huge promise of insurtech is going to come in, it's going to change everything and take everybody out, and agencies are dead. This is this and that. And I think we realize it's not that simple and it's not that easy, right? So we're now sort of we've corrected for that in the last couple of years, but you still need to make a name for yourself. You still have to have an angle, and you have to figure out ways to make noise, and you have to make people listen, right? Which is very different. Having worked for larger brands where you introduce yourself and the doors get opened because they know who you are, it's the complete opposite when you're an insurtech and when you're a startup. You've got to become known. You have to make noise, right?
What is it like to work on? I want to stay here for a second. What is it like
Sure.
to build a brand for insurtech startup when you are employee number three?
Yeah.
Like, how's that conversation start? What do you
Yeah.
focus on?
It's incredible, right? I mean, you sort of start from the beginning and what do you have to offer? Like what are you trying to change, right? And essentially, you talk to me more than once, you'll hear this consistency as well, but I'm always talking about what about the customer. So there's two angles to it from a startup and an insurtech perspective. What are you offering your direct customer if you're selling B2B? And then what are you offering your customers if you're selling B2C, and or what are you offering your B2B customers, right? So if you're a B2B player, what are you offering that other company's customers? That's different. That's an angle. So you start with that. You have to have a story. If you don't have a story, then it's very, very difficult, right? So you really got to work on that, build that story, understand what makes you tick, what's your brand ethos, right? And I think we've all seen the Start
Ooh,
With Why, right? The Simon Sinek video.
say that
So
one more time. That was so good.
which part?
The brand ethos, like you don't hear people talk about it.
Yeah, you got to understand what makes you tick, right? And I think we over commoditize the business a bit, and we tend to a lot of the conversations I've heard in my career in insurance, it comes down to, oh, customers only care about price, right? And I've heard that so many times, and it's not true. It's really not. I mean, price is a big player. I just had my cousin who owns a landscaping company reach out to me, and I've worked with him in the past as well and helped them in their business earlier on. But he was asking me like, "Hey, I need coverage for my business. We're no longer like a mom and pop shop. I want to make sure I'm covered, right?" And price didn't even enter the conversation. He's asking me for advice on who can cover his business, and you think about that, and it completely changes the mindset, right, of the business. So I really think you need to understand what are you about, what's your why do you do what you do, and what do you want your customers to think of you, right? I often think of brand and the way I kind of it's oversimplifying it, but the way I think about brand, it's less about how you speak about yourself, but more about how your customers describe you to other people, right? That's your true essence of your brand.
There's a couple of questions I served up, and
Mhm.
we don't dive into, but I have a couple more before we go there.
Sure.
When you see legacy carriers,
Mhm.
who had chief marketing or chief communication officer in a role for 2 decades, 3 decades,
Mhm.
what are some of the common mistakes you see they're doing or not evolving into in today's storytelling of their brand?
You know, it's funny. I think first of all, when I see somebody that's been in a chief marketing officer role for that much, I take my hats off to them and I give them a standing ovation, right? Because what happens in today's world is that marketing is slowly becoming almost like a throwaway thing. It feels like, oh, everybody can do that, right? And it couldn't be further from the truth. I think marketing is such a difficult thing to do. It's so challenging. And when you do it right and you can stand in that role for that long, kudos to you, right? And I almost flip your question around to go, what are they doing right? Because they have to be doing a lot of things right to be in that role, right? But when you see folks like that, most of the successful CMOs and the leaders in marketing, they're staying up to date with trends. They're staying up to date with what's going on in technology. They're really focusing on, you know, how do I service my customer? How do I make sure that when my sales team walks in the door, they don't really have to introduce themselves too hard because we've already done the job and laid the groundwork that they're going to be known by the time they get there, right? And I think from that perspective, it's kudos to them, hats off to them, right? Some of the things where I see people struggle and where they really need to step up and it's really hard is around making sure that they stay up to date, yes, but making sure that their voice stays heard within the organization, right? We've seen the shift in marketing throughout the couple, my career significantly changed, but in the last 5 to 10 years, maybe call it 5 years, huge shift where marketing is now becoming less and less the center of the discussion. It's controlling less and less of old school 4 Ps of marketing that we all have heard of. It's becoming less of an important player at the executive table. You're seeing CMOs reporting into CROs, right? And reporting into sales, which personally I think it's a huge mistake. And you're seeing a lot of that going on. So fighting for a voice
Dive into that one.
where
Why do you think it's a huge mistake? Thank you for watching this video. Now a quick message from our sponsor, Mav.
Thanks, Jeff. I want to let you all in on a secret that top producing agencies don't want you to know about. If you're in P&C insurance, you know firsthand how much you're getting squeezed by your call center. It's becoming less predictable and less economically profitable to scale. But here's the thing. The top producing agencies making over $100 million are not running their leads through a human-based call center. They're running them through an AI expert like Mav to qualify, quote, and hand deliver the highest intent qualified leads to your agents. Mav takes care of the back and forth, having unlimited 24/7 conversations with your leads that are personal and relevant so you can scale to the moon. Ready to ditch your call center and 10x your agency? We're giving the listeners of insurtech $15,000 worth of credit to try Mav. Head to hiremav.com/insurtech to claim this offer.
there should be, in my opinion, right? When it works well, there should be very little discussion about who gets the credit for the actual sale, right? There should be very little process to stand in the way of the two businesses, but there should be a little friction about how do we do this? How do we tackle this market? There should be a little back and forth, right? There should be a discussion where, no, we shouldn't do it that way. Maybe we should do it this way. And I think that's where you come up with a better product. But when you have marketing reporting into the sales organization, at least in my humble opinion, from what I've seen, marketing tends to become more of a servant organization and less of a driver, right? It's more of a, hey, go do this for me versus what do you think we should do here? And I think that's dangerous. I think that sets a bad precedence for the business and sets it down the wrong path for the future.
There is the storytelling, the marketing of the brand,
Mhm.
and then there's the story and marketing of the leadership, the people, the faces.
Mhm.
You know, in your role, how do you advise people that you work with on your team of how they should present themselves as a brand?
That's a great question, right? I think first and foremost, I think it's important that everyone in the business buy into the business before they do that, right? You got to make sure that whoever is representing your business fully understands what you're about, fully understands your brand ethos, right? Has drank the quote unquote Kool-Aid, if you will, uh, but really can stand in front of a crowd or in front of a person and explain your business the way that you would yourself, right? So you have to make sure that they're fully vetted in that sense. I also think they have to get training, right? Get actual training. There are firms that do this. There are even internal departments that do this. But make sure that you're trained. Make sure you understand how to speak and when to speak and what to say versus what not to say, right? So I think that that's critical. And then just like we talked about the brand itself, what's your story? What's your angle? How do we get that across, right? Um, very, you see this a lot more now. It used to be rare, right? I'm sure you've heard this, but in my career, I've heard many times where marketing leaders and executives say, hey, nobody post about us on social. Like marketing controls that message, right? And now it's the complete opposite. We've seen people don't follow brands. People follow people, right? They want to hear from those
100%.
executives.
People follow people.
Hmm.
I just want to say that, like, that got to be like loud,
Hmm.
amplified, bullhorn. Like, a lot of people don't understand that. When I go to events and shows and conference, company will spend 100,000, 150,000 on a booth going all out, but they fail to prepare the message for when the team talking to people. Like, anybody should be able to do an interview and brag about the company they're with, who spend money to send them to that conference, and that's always lost.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's interesting. All the trade shows I've been to and the folks that do it well, that's typically what they do. But then the other thing I've seen that's kind of interesting is their own team is actually creating content that then marketing can then leverage outside of that trade show. It's brilliant, right? Because you're getting two for one essentially. You're sending them there, you're already spending all that money. They're talking to press folks and folks in the business there, but then also generating content for you. I think it's incredible. But yeah, I do agree with you. It's important, right? It's important that you know and that the team is trained to be able to speak about your business and your product, for sure.
I got a couple questions teed up, so I'm going to go ahead and give them to you.
All
Talk
right.
about the evolving landscape of marketing.
Marketing is in a transition period right now, and there's a lot of conversations even within the marketing realm and professionals. You see this all the time in on LinkedIn, et cetera. But there's a lot of discussion about what marketing is, what marketing isn't, reinvention of things that have been done. There are things that are already in place, and then people trying to reinvent it, all this stuff. So I think it's evolving. I think there's a little bit of a correction going on where we've over-indexed in the performance marketing metrics, right? Where everything's measurable to a click. And I think you're starting to see that run out pretty quickly, where if you don't have a brand, if you don't have a message that people understand, you're sort of left behind. Like that click is not going to mean anything, right? So you're measuring the wrong thing essentially, right? You have to look at the whole picture. And a healthy mix is anywhere between 40-60 brand to performance marketing, right? That's in my experience and what I've seen. You have to invest in brand, and that's really hard to do today. And the first question you get asked as an executive is, how are you going to measure that? Well, brand you can't measure overnight. It takes time, right? So I think that's one of the biggest things that's happening right now in marketing. The other thing, as we all know, and you can't go to a conference or a trade show as you brought up and not hear about AI or Gen AI, right? That's coming up left and right, and I feel like every week I open my computer and there's 15 different companies that just popped up, essentially doing a lot of AI related stuff. AI, I think, is coming in for the good and for the bad, right? I think there's both the good and the bad. On the good front, from an individual use, think about all the things that we can do individually with AI from a marketing perspective. You can bounce ideas off of AI. Say, hey, I'm thinking about doing X, Y, and Z. What else am I missing, right? Or what other things can I do? It's really good at giving you feedback where you may write something or you may have a thought and you say, hey, provide me feedback on these ideas. It'll give you some pretty incredible feedback, right? Which I think is great. The other thing I think it does too is it allows you from a tools and applications perspective to tap into things that really took a ton of time before. So you're seeing companies pop up now that do one of the things that I'm excited about is around data and analysis and segmentation, right? There are some AI companies and tools that are popping up that will essentially go into your database, dig through your database, and find these commonalities among these segments and create these clusters for you that we were essentially doing up until now through Excel, right? And it took forever to kind of do. I remember going through spreadsheets and looking through individual names and information to try to figure out, is there something I'm missing? So that's an exciting piece. On the negative front, what I'm seeing is a lot of, so you run the risk of saying the same thing as other people are saying because you're using the same tool to create content, right? I think that's a really bad move. I think it's you can use it to help you, but not to do the whole thing for you, right? I do think the other thing that's causing a little bit is potential for people to get lazy, right? Where it's like, oh, I don't have to think about this. I don't have to sit here and whiteboard this for 2 hours. Let me just let ChatGPT tell me what I need to think. That's dangerous, man. You know the game. I don't care what you're doing, but when you stop doing the hard work and the thinking for yourself, and you let AI do that for you, there's a lot of risk that comes with that. So I think that's a big thing that's coming up. And then I think the last thing with the economy, the way things are going, marketing is always hit hard when it comes to these tough economic times. It always yields to bad results for the companies later. It always yields to them chasing later, right? So I'm curious to see how that's going to play, how that's going to work. And one of the reasons why I'm kind of doing a little bit of what I'm doing now, which we'll talk about that in a bit as well, but is to help those companies. Don't drop the ball. Don't stop doing marketing. Continue doing marketing, right? And adjust, because you will need it later and you will have to chase. And that's a lot harder to chase.
Let's go into that. What are you doing now?
Sure. Yeah, great question. So I left Corvus late last year and started my consulting practice, focusing on essentially two big elements. One is marketing consulting and a little bit of CX consulting as well. So if you have a project, if you've got, if you need to sort of launch a campaign, or you need to figure out, how do I go to market? What's my message, right? I can come in and help you, and deliver that and create that for you, bring in that huge baggage of 20 plus years of experience, and 10 plus years of insurance experience. That allows me to help you pretty quickly, right? And not miss a lot of time, and be pretty effective in that sense. The other piece I'm doing as well is around fractional leadership. So in the case that you have a gap on your team for whatever reason, right? It could be budgetary, it could be that somebody left. I can come in and essentially cover for that person and be the leader for your team, or a group within your team, until you tell me you tell me when you need me to stay, right? So essentially come in and make sure that the ship continues to move forward, and projects continue to move forward, and you continue to market to your customers. So it's been pretty exciting. I've got a couple of clients that I'm working with. One is actually an app-based product that's actually outside of insurtech, but it's fascinating because they're starting from scratch. And the first thing I sat with them and talked about is, what's your message, right? What's your story? So I worked with them through that, and now I'm helping them launch the business into the market again from scratch. And it's pretty exciting to see it sort of take off.
Chief fractional work should be a lot more popular than it is today. It is popular
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
Talk about why some companies should be doing chief fractional work. Thank you for all your support to our channel. Here's a quick word from our sponsor. Please click on the link below in the comment section to sign up for a demo with Track AI.
What if your insurance sales conversations could work harder for you? Meet Track, your AI-powered conversation intelligence partner. Track automatically captures and analyzes every customer interaction, providing instant call summaries, risk analysis, and AI-driven coaching insights. Say goodbye to manual note-taking and hello to more selling time. Track handles the admin work while you handle the revenue. Fully integrated with your favorite platforms. Plus, get custom AI analysis tailored to your unique business needs. Transform your sales team's performance with Track. Visit track.ai today.
Click the link in the description below to schedule a demo with Track today.
So if you think about it, right, there are various reasons depending on the size of the company as well. So for a startup and for somebody that's just starting out, may or may not have their fundings completed yet. So they may be in their initial round of funding, if you will. There's not a ton of money to go in and hire the right person, right? And when you hire the wrong person at a startup, that is really bad. It just exacerbates a lot of challenges that you could have by having the wrong person in. So what's beneficial to you in a startup role or in a startup world is that I bring a full baggage. I bring a full packet of skills and things that I've done and seen. This isn't hearsay. I've done these things. I've seen these things. I can help you right away, and for a fraction of the cost, right? It's essentially a fixed cost. I prefer to work on a retainer basis, but we can work on a project basis as well. So you tell me I've got X to spend. Let's make this happen for that amount of money, right? Typically what ends up happening is I get emotionally involved and I end up doing more than I should anyways. But I just love seeing these companies progress, and I love watching things happen from nothing, right? And it happens pretty quickly. You can watch it progress. So I think that's one of the benefits. The other benefit too there is just from a consulting perspective, outside of the fractional. If you've got this thing that you're trying to do and you're not sure how to do it, and you can't hire somebody to do it, bring me in for a short period of time. Bring me in for a couple weeks. Bring me in for a month. I can help you get that off the ground, right? So we can work multiple ways there. For a larger company, what you end up seeing a lot is leaders leave a team. And right now, I mean, the job market is absolutely insane. So you see folks, you see positions open for months, right? Where you're trying to find the right person, trying to vet the right person. And instead of leaving the team sort of without leadership for that amount of time, or taking the marketing team and plumping them into sales or service or whoever, bring me in, right, for a short amount of time or a couple of months or whatever it might be, until you find that full-time replacement. And I think that's a huge benefit, so the team doesn't go astray and things don't go missing, right, from your plan, because you still have to hit that quota at the end of the year, right? That's the beauty we all live under. So you make those commitments, and just because somebody leaves doesn't mean your commitment changes. So I can help you keep moving in the right direction.
I'm just like digesting on everything you said, and
Mhm.
you know what's going through my head is I know so many carrier folks, regional carriers,
Mhm.
and you know, specialty carriers, and I'm just going through my head like how many of them have a chief marketing person or even a fractional one, and then I was going through all of them in my head, and it was like zero, 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 and I'm just like, man, how much more exposure would they get for their business? How many less biz dev people do can they like afford not to hire because they're doing a fantastic job on just brand telling, storytelling, and because that itself is building a funnel. So yeah.
Absolutely.
So Eric, what about events? Like what events are you going to coming up and to network for yourself this year?
Yeah, great question. I'm actually finalizing my list. I've got a couple of the local events here in the area. InsurTech Hartford. There's also the Boston version that I've gone to a couple years, which has been great. There's the InsurTech Connect. I think I can't remember the date, but that's going to be in New York again this year, hopefully. So I got to
That one's
figure that one
InsurTech
out.
Insights.
What's that? InsurTech Insights.
InsurTech
Yes.
Insights in New York,
InsurTech
InsurTech
Insights. Yeah.
Connect
Sorry.
Vegas.
ITC is in Vegas. Yeah. So those are the main ones I'm going to do in the local area. I am still thinking about ITC. I went to ITC, I think 2 years ago. It was probably one of the largest insurance shows I've been to. It was just massive to the point where it was hard to even get a conversation because everyone was so busy doing so many different things. But that one's always a fun show to go to. Not to mention the golf around the event too. So that's another fun activity to be out there for. So get some business and some golf involved. But yeah, but I'm gonna stay local in the Northeast for the most part. And then if there are any events, in terms of clients that are attending or things like that, I may consider those as well.
Thank you for coming on to the podcast today. And in the next 9 to 12 months, I'd
Mhm.
love to have you back on.
Mhm.
What do you think we'll be talking about next 9 to 12 months?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in 9 to 12 months, we'll have a lot more clarity on the market and where things are. Hopefully, I think the Gen AI scene will have moved significantly by then. I mean, the pace is incredible, right? One of the things that I'm watching closely because of my work with Corvus and having been there for close to a year, I was there for about 11 months, is really looking at cyber. What's the future of cyber looking like? It's just fascinating where every week there's something new coming up and the product is having to evolve, the pricing structure is having to evolve. Underwriting has got their hands full with cyber, right? And understanding the value of cyber, I don't know that all businesses do yet, right? So I think understanding that piece for me has been interesting. So I think we'll have a lot to talk about. There'll be a lot going on, and looking forward to it. I'm excited for that. And thank you again for the invite and for having me on. I appreciate it.
It was a pleasure to have you on, and looking forward to chat with you again.
Sounds good. Same here, Jeff. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.